My name is Chaz Brackx, and I manage professional wrestlers, and I'm a rockabilly singer and a writer and a philosopher.
Wrestling is one of those interesting things that adds to the richness of a local culture. What do you think the appeal is to people? Why do people come to wrestling shows?
I think it's like really basic theater, like it's like Shakespeare, where the common people can come and see a morality play acted out. And well, I think it's different things to different people. To some people it's like sports, it's like going to support your favorite team or something like that. And then to other people, kind of, it's like entertainment. They see they kind of appreciate the art form involved. And, you know, they have their favorite workers, their favorite wrestlers who, you know, they've educated themselves about the business enough to where they can kind of watch a match and see who's more skilled and then also they'll hear like other professional guys that they respect vouch for that person too, and then they will develop an admiration and kind of appreciate it on that level. And it's like the people who are, some people are into it like almost like Trekkies, you know, where they know the whole history of everything. They know not only American wrestling, but like they know lucha libre in Mexico, they know Japanese purisu, they know Puerto Rican wrestling, and you know, stuff all over the world. And but it is, well, that's the other thing you're asking about, you know, why do people like it? Because it's just something that comes naturally to people. I think like monkeys wrestle, you know, little kids wrestle. It's just part of life. It's one of those things that people do. But one guy that I really like is Bret the Hitman Hart. It's one of my favorites. And the more I get to know about him, the more I like him. And some people are starting to not like him because he's eccentric and arrogant. But he's been through a lot, and the business was not always kind to him. He's the one that well, all of his brothers were wrestlers, and his father too. And his dad ran the territory in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where they're from. And I first saw Bret Hart tagging with his brother-in-law, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Since you know, Hart was part of his name, and then there was the guy Jimmy Hart, who used to work with Andy Kaufman, and he was the singer for the Gentrys before he got into wrestling. And he happened to have the name Hart too, even though they're not related, but they all happen to have the name Hart. So they put them all together as the Hart Foundation. And that was my favorite tag team when I was a kid. I thought they were really cool. They wore pink and black, and Bret Hart wore these big shades. He did better on his own as a singles wrestler after the tag team split up, and he went on to become the world champion and stuff like that. He was really successful on his own. And he, one of my favorite angles that they did when I was a kid, one of the most memorable things that I watched on TV, period, probably growing up, was the feud between Bret the Hitman Hart and his younger brother Owen, the youngest of the Hart brothers. The rivalry between the brothers was so believable, and you know, because there probably was a real rivalry between them. You know, they really are brothers, and so that was great. That was one of my favorite things. And Owen Hart is great too. He was always great to watch, and he. But he's the one that died. I don't know if you heard about a wrestler that fell from the ceiling trying to do a stunt. And you know, that pisses me off more than anything that ever happened in wrestling, because it was so totally unnecessary to have somebody do that. ask a guy to, I mean, he's a wrestler. He was a wrestler. Like, what are you doing asking somebody to come down from the ceiling on a bungee cord or whatever stupid thing they were trying to do? And the guy gets killed in front of like thousands of people, live on pay-per-view. I mean, it was just the single dumbest decision. It got to be the single stupidest decision that anybody has ever made in the history of the business. It was the most. It just makes me mad to think about it because it was so completely unnecessary to have somebody, like, why would you ask somebody to do something they could get killed? Like, and then some of these people, it was well, this happened during it's like the late 90s. They call it the Attitude Era, and this is when everything on TV was kind of trash TV, crash TV, whatever you call it. Like Jerry Springer was really popular. So all the other shows, including wrestling, were like, okay, so we have to be like that too. And then also they were kind of getting pushed in that direction by a smaller company called ECW that was starting to gain some traction and grow and become a legitimate competitor to them. And at the time there was also WCW, which was a huge company and pretty much on the same level as what was the WWF. And so during the Attitude Era, they started getting, kind of trying to outdo each other and doing all these crazy stunts and things like that. And even after, I read this in Bret Hart's autobiography, even after the whole thing happened with his brother Owen, where he was killed doing that stupid stunt, he went to work he was working for WCW already. By then, he had went over to WCW to work for them, and they had him do some kind of stunt where he was driving a truck, like a 18-wheeler truck or something. He had to do a sharp turn in the truck or something like that. And he's thinking, like, I'm not trained to do this. Like, I'm not trained to be a stunt driver, And it's just crazy stuff that nobody should be asking guys to do. It's just, stuff that, and some really trashy stuff that, was good for ratings at the time. Like, wrestling has never been more popular than it was then, as far as, like, I mean, technically, I think, in terms of TV ratings and how many people were watching, but, most of those people don't watch anymore. They're not they were just into it as a fad because there was so much crazy stuff happening. And so I think really that whole period of time really did more harm than good in the long run, because we're still kind of recovering from that. I mean, and I think that's the reason why some people don't want to let us run in their buildings and stuff like that, is because they saw all this crap on TV. And there were guys that I read an interview, a wrestler named Don Morocco, who after he retired from wrestling started promoting shows in his hometown, started a local promotion of his own. And once that Attitude Era stuff started, he had been running at churches and stuff like that didn't want anything to do with wrestling all of a sudden, because, even though it has nothing to do with anything that he was doing or his company, but they see that on TV and they think that's what wrestling is because that's what everybody knows. And so, they can, and so they hurt, it's like they don't even hurt them, so they hurt the whole industry with that stuff, not just their company.
What's the era now?
It's the new era, the next, I don't know, it's exciting, actually. I think it's an exciting time to be involved in independent wrestling, because it's time to kind of figure out now, where do we take it now? And I think there's this feeling of a lot of people are talking a lot of business theory with each other about, where's the industry gonna go and what's how do you do pro wrestling in 2013? People, the whole fan culture is totally different. People know. There used to be a lot of. I mean, I guess there still is to a certain extent, but a lot of things like, oh, well, you don't do this. You do things a certain way because if you do them the wrong way, then people are going to be like, oh, well, that's fake, and they're going to think it's fake. But now. People know that before they walk in the building. That even little kids, like the parent probably smartens them up on the way to the building. Okay, this is just a show, right? They tell them, like, I knew before I even watched it for the first time. My dad, we rented it on video, and my dad said, this is fake, right? So before I even watched it for the first time, like the movie The Wrestler was, some guys like like a wrestler named Lance Storm, who's a really smart guy that does a lot of blogging and runs a training school. Like, he wrote a review that just nitpicking the shit out of the wrestler, talking about how all these little things that were wrong with it. But most people, most guys feel that it was pretty accurate, and you know, there might be little things that you can know that wouldn't happen. It came on TV the other day, and I saw like some of the footage that they show of him hanging out in the locker room. Like, I would, like, it's so realistic to me that, like, if I didn't know better, I would totally believe that Mickey Rourke used to be this wrestler called Randy the Ram, and you know, it was totally, completely believable to me. But so, you know, and then people see that, and then so they know you can learn a lot. You know, see it. You kind of, that's a pretty good right there. And then there's documentaries too. That's even more real. You know, it's just showing actual footage of actual locker rooms and actual events. And there was one, I just saw one called "Cards Subject to Change," which is a great name for a documentary about indie wrestling, because that's the goes on the bottom. It's funny, we always forget to put it on our flyers, but you're supposed to put it on every wrestling flyer in case somebody doesn't show up or something, so people don't demand their money back. Yeah, I mean, it's, if guys are properly trained and they are doing things the right way, like barring some kind of freak accident or something, they shouldn't get permanently injured. Anyway, I mean,
you're going to get beaten up a little bit.
Right, I mean, you're going to get some bumps and bruises no matter what. I mean,
I had a great time, by the way. I really enjoyed the show.
I'm glad to hear it. I mean, that's...
it was wonderful.
That's what it's all about to me, you know, entertaining people, making people happy. Like, it's, just,
it's got a great vibe.
Yeah, and then people get so into it, which is great, especially, like, some people take it really seriously. Like, some of the fans are so, like, they get really passionate, and they really believe in it, and it's, the emotion is very real, and I don't know, it's just awesome. It's just not like anything else. It's like I said, it's taking a real, like, primitive thing and
it is primal,
allowing us to do it in this kind of pseudo-civilized way.
Very stylized.
And also be creative and all these other things. It's just so much fun. So
yeah.
Some people take it a little too seriously, like you know, about stuff like that. I mean, it's important to respect tradition and the history of the business and things like that. But some people go a little bit overboard, I think. Like there's a wrestler named John Moxley who just got signed to WWE not too long back, and I saw an interview with him. Like, there was like a sit-down interview like this. He was talking about how some guys get real, you know, talking about respecting the business and get real, kind of like, he said that he says, you know, we run around in our underwear making mean faces, so let's not get carried away with the you know, taking it too seriously.
Keep it in perspective.
Right. I understand. There's certain things like, it's like some things people are saying you do for respect, like wiping off your boots before you get in the ring. It's like, that's not, I mean, yeah, I guess you could look at it as a respect thing, but I think it's also more of like a practical thing, like, so that, for, like, you know, sanitary reasons. Like I've read about in the old carnival days, like way back when, guys used to get, some guys would get, there was like some kind of disease that you could get from dirty canvases, like wrestling on dirty canvases, where guys would go blind. And I mean, this is like 100 years ago, or like in the carnival days, you know. But so you want to keep the ring sort of clean, and keep like wipe your boots off before you get in the ring, stuff like that. But you know, stuff like that, it's like practical, and you're supposed to try to introduce yourself to everybody when you get in the locker room. But again, that's kind of a common sense thing too. I mean, you're all kind of working in a closed space together, and I mean, it's gonna get awkward really fast if you're unfriendly to the other people that you're working with, basically. And like, it's not gonna take long for people to figure out, like, okay, I guess that guy is not very friendly, and you know, get a reputation. And you know, wrestling is a relatively small circle. It's like, you know, you saw at our show where we pretty much didn't promote very well, I guess. Apparently we drew like 30 people or something, and but we had Necro Butcher there from The Wrestler. We had Sabu at our shows, some kind of fairly big name guys, and you know, I mean, everybody that works for us is probably, I mean, you know, has a story about the time they worked with, you know, some Hall of Fame guy or whatever, because it's a, you know, it's like a relatively small circle like that compared to music, where you never, if you're like a independent band or something, you never sniff somebody that's going to the Grammys or whatever like that. But it's just not, with wrestling, it's just not that way. It's a small circle. Everybody knows everybody, and that's awesome. You know, I mean, you know, like people who are famous. Like if you are like, if you get into the business, like you'll be in the business for less than like a couple years before you've met at least a few guys probably that you watched on TV, or like guys that you didn't necessarily think you were going to meet at some point, you know, and you might not even know they're going to be there. Like when I went, I didn't know Necro was going to be there last time I walked in Summit Walk, I was really surprised. I had no idea he was going to be there. I would have advertised him had I known. Same thing, Sabu was kind of a last minute thing too that time, but of course he lives around here when he's not busy living in Bombay, India, where he's really from, you know, but from Bombay, Michigan.
Chaz, tell me how you got started doing wrestling.
Well, through a friend of a friend, I got in touch with Rigo Flores, the founder of International Ring of Grapplers. That's a local company here in town. First event was almost a year ago, about a year ago, so coming up on our 1-year anniversary show. I kind of liked the bad guys when I was a kid, because you could, well, because I wasn't as good at sports as like my older brother and his friends. They kind of picked on me, but in wrestling, like, you could still win. Like, you know, if you could just hide something in your trunks or whatever, and then the referee's not looking, you knock the guy out. And I liked that, you know, I was like, I could do that.
So did you think of being a wrestler?
Yeah, well, I think actually the funny thing is, first I thought of myself as maybe I could be a manager. I think that was like a confidence thing, kind of, because, you know, you don't have to be, it's not as athletic to be a manager as a wrestler, obviously. But then when I got a little older and I was like a little bit bigger and stuff, and I was working, doing like physical labor jobs and stuff, so I started to harden up a little bit. I thought, well, maybe I could be a wrestler, and then I like pretty much I started, you know, tearing shoulders and messing things up, doing just regular work. So and so now I'm back down to manager.
Manager promoter.
Right. But it's probably just as well, because I've always been more of a thinker and more of a creative type anyway than an athlete. Like I said, I was always not totally unathletic, like the, you know, like the kids who can't throw in a straight line and stuff like that, but I wasn't like one of the really good players, you know, where I would probably not make the team. I wouldn't be the first person cut, but I wouldn't make the team.
So you did music for quite a while.
Yes.
Tell me about the music.
Well, I started out singing when I was little. I sang in church, and I was a sunbeam. And I read, when I was a freshman in high school, I read John Lydon's autobiography, and that got me really wound up. It gave me a lot of ideas. It was I remember there was like one part in the book where he talked about how he would sit in class at school and just stare at the teacher. Just sit there and stare at him with his eyes wide like that. And because the beauty part was that there was nothing that she could do about it, because he wasn't doing anything wrong. He's like, you know, what's the teacher going to do? Go to like the principal and be like, these kids won't stop looking at me, you know, and she'd make a fool of herself. So, I don't know, so I guess stuff like that really appeals to me. I think like when if you're the kind of person that like people used to pick on you when you were young and stuff like that, you sort of get like that when you're older, like you
A little bit rebellious.
right. It starts to become fun to kind of find little ways to poke back at people and get your little revenge.
So what bands were you with?
Well, I started out playing with my brother and our friend Sam, and we had like a band that was pretty much like we didn't like my first band. We didn't actually play any shows or anything. We just played it in my friend's basement, and we just did like Sex Pistols covers. And but the first band I played out with was we were called the Black Lungs. Eventually, we went through a couple of their names first, but and then that was me and Colin Such, who's he's in a local band called Fun Ender. That's I know a lot of people that are really into Fun Ender. That's they're one of their favorite bands because he's been doing that for a long time now. But and then a guy named Ian Sigurski, who's played with a lot of different bands. He played with the Hitman for a while when they got back together a few years ago. Colin had started, and my brother had started Fun Ender, and we had just been in the Black Lungs together. And I was like, those guys are more technically good musicians than me, so I had to do something to kind of like outdo them in another way. So I started more of like a noisy, like crazy band. And that's when I started. That's when I brought up the cane for the first time. It was with Tax. So that because
You still use that with wrestling?
sometimes, well, I started out with the cane, and then since then I've gone through a couple other gimmicks because it was kind of funny because I started.
Just so that way I don't have
I got the idea for the cane from wrestling, from Classy Freddie Blassie, and then a bunch of guys have copied him too, and managers with canes. So. So when I was a singer, I liked having the cane because it was different, you know. But then once I became a manager, then I started wanting something else instead because for a wrestling manager, a cane is like a normal thing that a lot of guys have, you know. So then that's why since then I've done one. I did a crutch, and then the next time I tried, I have an umbrella that's like pink and it has black music notes on it. And then the last time I had that pink mirror that you saw, and I liked that gimmick, and I probably would have used it for a while, but I don't know if you saw the video where John Campbell, he smashed it. He attacked Jun Hado after the show. We did a video with that, so that mirror is gone. But I liked the mirror gimmick, so I think I'm going to try to find another mirror like that. I'm sure I could probably find one for like $1 at the dollar store or something.
There's a lot of overlap, though, in the sense of punk and wrestling having a sort of its own sensibility, its own way of looking at the world, a little bit of off-center, mocking, making fun of things, showmanship.
Yeah, I think it almost takes it even to more of a extreme as far as like it's the individualism of it, because you don't even, at most you might have like a manager or something. I guess there are some groups in wrestling, but most of the time it's just one person out there by themselves and they have their thing and that's it. So, and I like that about wrestling too, because you don't have to, there's a lot of things that, well, in one sense, that's funny, I was about to say something that is going to contradict something else I'm going to say in a minute, because here's the thing, you can do a lot of things by yourself in wrestling where you don't have to rely on other people, like with a band where you have to get people together to rehearse, and if those people can't make it, then you might not be very good at the gig, even if, you know, and so forth. But so you can do a lot of your own homework and stuff like that. But the reason I felt weird about saying that was because one of the things that I really like about wrestling too is the whole sense of community where everybody is kind of necessary. And one of the things, the way I was taught is that everybody is just as important as everybody else and everybody deserves the same respect. It doesn't matter if you are one of the main event wrestlers or if you are a curtain jerker in the opening match, if you are a referee, if you are the guy who sells popcorn, you deserve just as much respect as everybody else, and the show could not go on without everyone's contributions.
You see more authenticity in the wrestling community?
Yeah, which is kind of ironic, huh? You know, because music is supposed to be where you're like sharing your real self and bearing your soul to the world and all this stuff. And you know, wrestling is like you. Sometimes you don't even come up with your own gimmick. A lot of the times you just do it in what the promoter tells you. But but I guess the effort involved in like the spirit that goes into it is more authentic. I guess it's a more the passion. There's more passion, more real passion.
There's a real connection to the audience too. I saw that the other night. The audience, it really does care, and there's a real connection between the wrestlers and the people who are there as fans.
Absolutely.
And it's nice to see that.
And you can feel that when you're out there, and it's they tell you one piece of advice that I've heard from some of the veterans is that if you make eye contact with one person in the audience, just pick one person and kind of play off them the whole time. Like every time you sell something with your facial expression, like kind of focus on that one person, and through them you will get everyone by like establishing that personal connection, because then everyone else will sort of relate to that.